Whoa! Oh! Dad is just be different.
Fucking Santa Claus ass.
I must be Santa Claus for this event. Witchcraft. Witches. Hey guys, I'm Aurora.
I'm Violet.
And we are the T.N.I Book Club. And this is the T.N.I Book Club. We is the T.N.I. Today we're going to be talking about the book that we read called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. So this book was actually published last year in January, actually. You haven't read anything by Grady Hendrix.
I didn't even know he existed.
Oh.
Until you brought him up and you were like, we should read this.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I push for him in any capacity. Yeah, I love his book, My Best Friend's Exorcism. That was my introduction to him. And then I also have We Sold Our Souls, which is a really fucking awesome book. Look at this cover. Like, I don't know if you guys can see it from that.
It's like witchy, weird text.
There's like runes and stuff on it.
Demonic stuff.
It's sick. And then his other book I really enjoy is Horrorstor, which is really fun. And it has its own like aesthetic business where it looks like an IKEA manual. But it's also a really good story outside of the whole presentation of it all. But he's got like a really cool style. And I feel like he tells really interesting story. Like he has different ideas with his stories. And that's why I really like his books. And that's why I was really excited to talk about this one. Mm-hmm. What were your expectations when you were going in?
I expected it to pull like a Slewfoot. Have you read that book yet?
I haven't read that
by Brom. Yet. I expected it to turn into like a revenge story, kind of. Just from like the cover and like the themes of it that I kind of got the vibe of. So that's what I expected. Because I didn't read anything else from him. And, you know, I read Slewfoot like a little bit ago.
Have you read any other like witch books?
No, I have not.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. This book had some really great quotes, but I wanted to really quickly read one or two from the beginning. We both read the audiobook. I have a physical copy. I also got the digital copy from the library. When I was going through the physical, I never read the actual introduction. So I'm kind of tempted to go back and read what Grady Hendrix has to say, because now I'm seeing that he has a whole thing about why he wrote this. But anyway, sorry. These are some of the quotes. You can't call your soul your own once you've had a baby without a marriage certificate. Ladies' Home Journal, 1947.
And I guarantee most of this shit was written by men.
Well, yes and no. You want to be like, oh, it's always the man, it's always the man. But then when we find out that some of these lawmakers who have made laws even today that have great impact on female autonomy have been made by other women.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I experience it sometimes. Like when I grew up a little bit, it's like a lot of times it's your own relatives and community. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, actually.
Yep. It be the ones. The calls coming from inside the house. The other one that also really pissed me off is this one. You shouldn't have a baby when you're not married. You just have to stop it. President Bill Clinton, 1994. Now, we all know in the year of our Lord, 2026, Lil Clinton shouldn't be talking about no teenage girls.
Nope.
Epstein files. But yeah, so there were parts like that. And then even in the beginning, she mentions, there's like a paragraph, and I felt so dumb because she mentions the weathermen, students being shot on campus. And I was just like, this is table setting. But then when I went and I researched, do you know what she's talking about there?
I don't know. Some massacre? I know there's a lot of shootings.
So 1970, in the late 60s, early 70s, people were upset about the Vietnam War.
Right, yeah.
This is one of the wars that I know the least about.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about it in school, probably because we lost it.
Yeah.
There were a lot of protesters at that time. Notably in Ohio, there was a school where there were people protesting the war. The National Guard was called, and they were shot by the National Guard. This is known as the Kent State protest in Ohio. That was May 4th, 1970.
That's fucked up.
So there's the weatherman that she mentioned. I thought she was talking about like the actual weatherman. I was like, maybe there was some kind of weird pop culture moment with the weatherman. No, the weathermen were actually, that's a part of something called the Weather Underground, which were a militant group of anti-Vietnam protesters. Thinking about what was going on. This was at a time before they had social media. People were not exposed to this kind of violence.
I mean, I think the reason why Vietnam was so unpopular, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've been in history class. I think it's because it was actually one of the first like kind of televised wars, and people actually saw what was happening.
Exactly.
And how disgusting wars are and what we were doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so unpopular. And that's when the government started hiding more.
Don't censor us. No, but this is why I want to read more historical fiction. So that was my first, I would say, historical fiction. This is my second ring shout. Now,
I only know like Jane Austen.
I don't think that counts, but we'll discuss that another
Technically it is.
Girl, does Jane Austen books count as historical fiction? Comment below. So after discovering that I had actually full on missed these references.
Me too. I knew about the Vietnam War and that's it.
Yeah.
I didn't know like what they were talking about.
Exactly. I was like, there's so many things in here that like I just missed and was kind of just like, oh, okay. But then I was like, okay, no, I need to go back. So then when I annotated this book, I made it a point to double check and make sure this is not an actual real historical reference because you'd be amazed. But I mean, I feel like most people who are more familiar with the genre are well aware of this. But again, this is not typically a genre that I read. But I loved how both this book and Ring Shout fold in actual events with the fantasy and fiction that they're building. And it allows you to have another perspective of those things, but also gives you the opportunity to look into the reality of it all. I feel like I was like, man, I'm actually learning something. I mean, they say reading is fundamental, and it really is.
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot we were supposed to read the synopsis, so I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
15-year-old Fern arrives at the home in the sweltering summer of 1970, pregnant, frightened, and alone. Under the watchful eye of the stern Miss Wellwood, she meets a dozen other girls in the same predicament. There's Rose, a hippie who insists that she's going to find a way to keep her baby and escape to a commune, and Zinnia, a budding musician who plans to marry her baby's father, and Holly, a wisp of a girl, barely 14, mute and pregnant by no one knows who. Everything the girls eat, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by the adults who claim to know what's best for them. Then Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft. Power is in the hands of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy as easily as it creates. It's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood.
That's a long ass blurb.
It is a long ass blurb, but I feel like it's effective. Genre wise, this would be considered horror / historical fiction.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I watch movies and I read books set in the 70s, right? But I didn't even know that they did stick pregnant girls in these weird houses and expected them to just give birth and then they basically steal their babies and give them away. At first, I thought it was literally fictionalized, but the more I read it, I was like, wait, and I Googled it. This is an actual thing that they did.
Spoiler section. If you don't want to be spoiled, get the fuck out of here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding. Get out of here. But
she didn't mean to cuss you out. Unless you didn't. Okay.
The way this book starts, though, it was such a banger.
Okay, I loved it mostly because it kind of lays into the dread. Right? She's in a car with her dad. He's being a dick. He's berating her, yelling at her, basically calling her worthless.
Not telling her where they're going.
She shamed their whole family or some shit, which honestly, I think it's the fault of the parents just automatically because she's a minor. But that's just me.
From the jump, you don't know who is who and what is going on. And it's very fast paced. I loved that part of the introduction. And like you said, it was so tense and chaotic.
I thought it also touched on the body horror immediately too. When she was kind of describing her pregnancy. It was less like, a natural phenomenon that women go through and more of like, oh, I've got this parasite in me and stuff like that.
I'm not going to lie. That's part of why this book was scary to me because I've always kind of had a weird thing about being pregnant myself.
It's scary.
It's scary.
Because it's a lot of work, especially but it's scarier because they're children.
Yeah. It's scary because you're alone. You're literally pushing something out of you. I don't always love horror that is centered around pregnancy, but I like how Grady Hendrix really used that to amplify the actual horror of the reality.
I think the issue you have when people talk about pregnancy and horror is because a lot of the time it's a little bit degrading. Sometimes when they describe pregnant women or people who are pregnant with aliens, they describe it as just disgusting by itself. But when he talks about it, which I thought he was a woman when I first read it.
Everyone always thinks that.
He does it more of a way in like, it's horrifying because, right, number one, they're kids. We talk about that. And two, it's the pain that makes it horrifying to go through something like that and the possibility of you dying simply because you are experiencing birth.
Mm-hmm. And it's like an expedited transition. It's 9 months, but 9 months isn't really that long of a time frame.
Especially when no one tells you shit.
Exactly. It's so funny that you said that you thought he was a woman. I feel like the first time I went to the bookstore looking for another one of his books, somebody had also been like, oh, she's such a good writer. She's such a good writer. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he's a man.
A straight man. Isn't he married to a woman?
I believe so.
The second you said he was a man, I was like, okay, so he's probably gay. That's like so presumptuous of me, but
well, that's what I find really interesting because I don't think I've read any of his books where the protagonist is male.
Interesting.
All of them, like from Horrorstor to, My Best Friend's Exorcism, they're all centered around women. And that's why I feel like it's understandable that people think he is a woman author, because not just because he writes about women, but it's the way he writes about women. I felt like his point of view, especially in this book, was so empathetic and real.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can tell he did his research.
Exactly. He's not just being like, what do the girlies think? I don't know. Because I know I've read some books where they're written by men and it's like, girl, do you even know women?
That's like every other book I read.
The quick introduction into the novel like that was a pleasant surprise for me. Yeah. And then once you get to the actual house, really getting to know everyone, getting to see the personalities of the other girls. I love
Rose's introduction. She's such a baddie, such a queen.
Can we talk about Rose?
Yeah, we can talk about Rose. She was my favorite character.
She definitely was one of my favorites as well. Her little white feminism, that had me cracking up. I forgot what she said at one point. It was before Zinnia, the black character, has come in, and she's just like, Black Power.
No, dude, that was literally like my favorite scene because I was laughing so much. Where like Zinnia, who is another fellow pregnant lady, child, who is introduced, and she's the only black character there, and
black child,
and she goes in. And immediately Rose is like, power to us sisters.
She's like, no, you shouldn't have to live in like a different room. I will sleep in the attic and you can have this bed. And she's like, I'm not even asking for this kind of treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, yeah, I love that she was so well-intentioned and she just went overboard.
I mean, that stuff happens all the time though, I feel. Where people are well-intentioned, right? But, sometimes it's a little much.
Yeah. And they're also kids. That's the other thing. It's like they're kids. So like that kind of behavior, it's forgivable for children. We meet a couple of the girls and there honestly, I felt like there were so many girls that we get introduced to and then we kind of don't ever see again.
Who was the first girl she talked to?
Hazel. That's the one who was like, oh, what's your sign? Oh, wait, no. Or was that the other one? Bryony. I don't remember.
Yeah, someone else was like, what's your sign? She was the like really intelligent one. And she was like,
yeah,
just sit back and relax and then just let them do their thing and then be over with it.
I'm not going to lie. If my parents sent me away,
I would never forgive them.
I would be of two minds. If we haven't made this clear, when these girls are pregnant, they are sent to this home where they are meant to continue with the pregnancy, have the baby, and then the baby goes up for adoption after so they can go back to their lives like nothing ever happened. But anyway, back to the story. So Fern's dad tells her that he's a fucking dick. So he tells her that he's going to say goodbye to her because he has to go and talk to the lady who runs the home.
Yeah.
Miss Wellwood. So he's talking to Miss Wellwood and she's getting this introduction to the other girls in the house. And while she's meeting up with them, she just looks out the window and somebody's like, hey, isn't that your dad? Isn't that your dad dipping out? And he's like just driving away.
Was it Rose that said that?
I think it was Rose. And it's like so messed up. But, you know, sometimes dads just be dipping.
Honestly, a lot. Like all the time.
And that's part of the problem.
Yep.
So like her dad leaves. She feels shitty. We meet other people.
Yeah. And I loved how, especially in the beginning, where it's like every day's kind of the same, you know, it's a routine that they're in. It's very monotonous. She goes through the girls, right? Mm-hmm. Not all of them are very memorable, except for the fact that she kind of forces herself in to their cliques. And that's when we get that scene where she's kind of out the window and then they're talking about movies and she chips in. And then they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? We
learn that there's another girl there. She's dirty. She looks really young and she doesn't talk to anybody. She just had a lot of things going on with her. But in the beginning, you don't know I didn't know what was going on with her. I was like, maybe she's just autistic. But then when they described her as being so young, I was like, oh.
Yeah. Because you hear about like kids who are abused when they're younger, when they just stop talking, they can develop learning disabilities and stuff. Her name was Holly. And when they first introduced her, you know, she's kind of introduced as this mute, like you said. Eventually, she does speak towards like the second half of the book, which honestly, I was kind of disappointed, you know?
Really?
Because I feel like we don't get enough mute characters. And I was very interested in how he would write her as someone who's not talking, right? Especially in such, you know, with books, it's not like a movie where you have, you know, sounds and visuals as well. You have to imagine it yourself as you're reading. And I was very interested in how he would write Holly as a mute character, because honestly, there aren't many in literature. But then she started talking and I was like, oh, well, you know, which I kind of got over it, but I think it's a missed opportunity. I think it is. And I would have been interested in finding out her backstory through the other girls, just figuring it out.
Well, that's the whole thing. I don't think we would have been able to know her backstory because no one knew.
But they didn't know. Didn't Hagar like eventually find out after? I mean, it was after
Hagar found out.
Wellwood absolutely knew. There's no way she didn't just not know. She doesn't get pregnant and then the pastor comes and is like, oh, give me the baby.
I don't know, because stuff like this happens. So what we're talking about is Holly is brought there with the same, you know, expectations as everyone else to carry out her pregnancy, give the child up for adoption. But instead of just going through the adoption agency, they already know who the baby is going to be given to, which is her pastor.
Sketchy as fuck.
And we find out it is her pastor who is not only the father of her child, but has been abusing her since she was like 9, I think they say.
8.
8?
Yeah.
It's fucking disgusting. That actually motivates the rest of the story. Because once the girls find this out about her,
they like try to save her. Yeah.
They don't want her to have to go back home because unfortunately, Holly's parents are fully aware that this is happening.
Yeah.
And don't plan on doing anything about it. Just letting things continue as usual, which again is unfortunately not unheard of. With teenage pregnancies, it makes me angry because people are like, oh, they're irresponsible. Oh, they're irresponsible just for, you know, doing this and that and the other. But just like anyone else who can get pregnant, there are so many other circumstances that can cause that kind of condition. And that does not mean that anybody, regardless of how they ended up, are not worthy of respect or kindness.
Yep.
And these girls were not given any of that. So as a form of entertainment, there's a traveling librarian who shows up, Mrs. Parsay.
And basically, Fern was looking for things about pregnancy because she's already read all the books that they have. And when she goes to the librarian, she finds that a lot of the books she has, she's already read as well. And she goes to her and she asks Miss Parsay, hey, I want a book about pregnancy, right? Something just to learn. And then Miss Parsay gives her a witchcraft manual called How to Be a Groovy Witch. And then they go in, she reads it, and Zinnia, she has really bad illness and
like morning sickness.
Yes, she throws up all the time throughout the whole day.
Can't stand the smell of Lysol.
Yes. And the doctor, very dismissive. He basically is just like, you shouldn't open your legs. That same thing that they say over and over again.
Yeah.
And basically Fern finds a spell to transfer Zinnia's sickness into the doctor.
Which I'm not going to lie, I loved.
Yes, I love that shit too. I wish he stayed ill like the entire book. He kind of did. Like you could, like every time he came up, he was like, "Oh, the pale doctor." But I wish he just like suffered that the rest of his life.
Well, I mean, I guess because Zinnia wasn't suffering her entire life, but because like it did have a toll on him though, because he's an old man compared to her young teenage body going through all of that pain and morning sickness. Because he like doesn't he like blow chunks like all over the office?
Yes.
It's a rowdy scene, which I wasn't sure what they were gonna do at first with the spell.
I thought they were gonna transfer into the, was it a lemon?
Yeah.
I thought the lemon was like gonna explode or something.
And I was like, oh, okay. But no, they were like, oh no, we're putting this in another person.
Let me just say though, I listened to the audiobook throughout, and this is for the entire thing, but I noticed it in this area when they were doing the first spell to fix Zinnia's illness. The voice actor, I hated how she read the book. I could not stand it. Like,
wait. The whole time or only at that point?
A lot of the time. Like, it wasn't horrible, but so in the book, because I know you actually read it, does he write out the actual spells when they're saying it? Like the entirety and the noises and everything?
I'm glad you asked this. I literally bookmarked the scene. Okay, because I know you had mentioned that there was like a part that bothered you. And I think it'd be fun if you try to read it yourself and how you think it should have been read on the audiobook.
So here's my thing. I don't think it should have been written. I don't think he should have written all of the noises.
She said no onomatopoeia, Grady.
I don't think he should have written, because it pulled me out of the horror. Because, well, they're doing these witchy spells and they're just like, and then randomly, I was cooking breakfast and randomly they're just like, whoa! And oh my God. And towards the end, which we're going to get to that, but towards the end, Holly gives birth. I swear it was so long of just being like, you're a wolf. Oh, and I was like, girl, shut the fuck up. It wasn't scary. It pulled me out of the horror. And the fact that he writes that's one of my biggest gripes in this book. The fact that he writes it all out, I don't think that's horrifying. It's not scary.
Can you please read this? I'll start it off for you.
Oh my God.
Fern saw her far off shadow on the long grass as she went by. She saw all their shadows, and they looked like giants. They looked like monsters. They were like goddesses. They looked like witches.
Ho, ho, ho. Fern chanted. Fucking Santa Claus ass. You say, they replied, Ayo, veo, ovo, vo. You know what I mean? It sounds dumb. They lost themselves in the chant. I didn't. Feet scuffling and dancing. This stuff goes on for pages, and it's all capitalized. And I'm sorry, Grady Hendrix. So for the most part, I liked how the book was written, except this. Cut it out. It wasn't just that. She was so dramatic about everything. It was like, she looked out the window and she saw the tree line. Oh no, trees? Bitch. Who cares?
As someone who is taking courses in how to read audiobooks, I have a lot of empathy when I'm listening to an audio version. I also listen to the audiobook for this. Mm-hmm. And her performance didn't bother me for the most part.
I mean, she did better than I could, obviously, clearly.
But I definitely see what you mean. If you're not one who enjoys audiobooks where there is a lot of emotion throughout the reading, maybe avoid the audio version.
Read the book. I mean, but even then, when I see that in books, I would just skip over it. I would just skip the entire scene. I'm a very impatient reader. I'm sorry. That's probably my thing.
Zinnia feels bad about transferring the spell to the doctor, but the other girls are more interested in learning how this book can help them empower themselves in this situation that they're in at the home. And I think Holly is so amazed. That's when she starts talking.
Yeah. She starts talking because they're like naked as fuck at like the river or something in the woods, and then that's
Skyclad.
Yes, that's when they start sharing all their stories. And then that's also when they run into Miss Parse again.
Yes, because one of the things about doing the spell is that it demands them to be sky-clad beneath the stars, which I honestly loved because I could not stop being like, I must be sky-clad for this event. I'm just taking off.
Honestly, I always wanted to moonbathe. It's just me.
No, I would moonbathe. I would do it.
Let me tell you, I used to be obsessed with like becoming a mermaid when I was a little girl. I would like Google and like look at all the rituals to become a mermaid and stuff, and I would always, because it always said you have to do it at midnight, right? Okay, so this is a tangent.
I'm like, wait a minute, there's rituals to become a mermaid.
So when I was younger, I wanted to become a saltwater mermaid, and I lived by the sea in Baltimore, and I would look at all these ritual things on like Pinterest and stuff. They would all basically say you have to do that at like midnight, and you have to say this chant and walk into the water and you'll become a mermaid. But I could never stay up that long. So I would just fall asleep, and I never got to become a mermaid.
I don't think you've read it, but you should read that book, Chlorine.
I think that was like someone's name in my relatives. Someone was named Chlorine or something. Fucked up, I know.
I mean, I can't even, with the name of Aurora, you can only imagine the interesting names I have throughout my family. So.
I mean, I like the name Aurora though.
Thanks, I like it too, but I didn't always. Comment below if you want to see us try to become mermaids.
Dude, if that works, I'd be gone. Okay, tangent over. What were we talking about again? Oh yeah, they were moonbathing.
Yeah.
I do find it weird though how every time they did undress, Fern would be like, and her belly bounced. And I was like, okay, girl.
Look, she's admiring her body. And she also like felt very uncomfortable with being pregnant. We kind of lightly touched on it in the first, like when we were talking about the first chapter, but she talks about how when she's pregnant, she's swollen, she's sweaty, she's got all this acne, and she sees Rose, and Rose is proud, beautiful, glowing with her pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And she talks about, she's like, I don't think I've ever seen that before. Mm-hmm. And which I think is really interesting too, because I don't think people talk about how pregnancy can be different for other people. My mother, when she kind of explained some of her pregnancy, because she had 4 kids, she said that every time she was pregnant, her eye prescription changed. She had to get new glasses. Yeah. Like after every pregnancy. My sister said, well, there's pictures of my sister, and like you can see like before and after and during her pregnancy, like her nose changed in size. That's weird. I know. That's weird as fuck. That's what I'm saying. Witchcraft. There's witches. Oh my God. That reminds me of a really great quote that they get to when they run into the coven in the woods, where she's like, oh, you know, in Germany, they did this and this and this to us. In Zambia, they do this and this and this. So witch literally translates into wise woman. So witches used to be, because I'm like obsessed with like druids and like paganism, witches used to actually have status in a lot of societies. Obviously, they didn't call them witches in every aspect, but they were wise women. And then probably somewhere down the line, people started using that against them, and they were like making deals with the devil. And then they started burning them. That's interesting. I just read this other book, and it's a collection of essays called I Tried Being Nice by Anne Leary. She brings up a really good point about how there's some people who claim that they were the descendants of witches. And she's like, but I'm pretty sure a majority of these people are descendants of the accusers. And nobody ever wants to claim that side of it. So after they do the ritual, because not only the one thing we also forgot to mention about the book is when they first get it, it's almost impossible to read. Yeah. And they don't understand it at all. And the more and more they use the book, the more it starts revealing parts of itself to them. Specifically Fern, because Fern is the one who's pushing the most to actually learn from the book itself. So I thought that was an interesting...
Yeah, I think Miss Parcay, when they made a pact with her, because when they're in the woods, that's when they make the pact with Miss Parcay, because she's the leader of their coven. And then basically say like they will obey her and then they'll get the powers. And that's when they kind of start experimenting a little bit more. I will say though, after they cure Zinnia's sickness, they don't really do that much witchy stuff, except like I can think of like 2 more times in the book, which I did find that disappointing. I thought it could have been incorporated a lot more in terms of the witches. And I thought, I'll bring this up again towards the end of the book, because during the climax, I was like, anyway. So I really thought a lot of the witches were very interesting when they like walked into the woods and met the coven after they made that deal with her.
Yes. So they end up getting to that point because a little bit after the whole Zinnia thing, Rose, who has been planning this entire time to keep her baby and have it born at a certain time, they're starting to push her to have her baby earlier than it's supposed to be due. And she understands that they're going to be doing everything that they can to make her get rid of her baby, even though they keep saying under the guise of people like Diane, who is a social worker.
Oh my God.
Girl, what an evil, evil person. But so Diane actually is kind of introduced
with no payoff. She just disappears and never mentioned again.
Yes. It's like, what's his name? Mom from Holes. It was giving me very much nice in your face and like you think they're a very nice person and that they actually care.
She's a manipulative cunt. I mean,
so fucking manipulative. So anyway, they find out that they're going to be trying to push Rose to have her baby early. She ends up going into labor early anyway. And then when she comes back, you can tell that she's lost all of her glow and her veracity that she had before.
And then she wants revenge.
Right. Because you do find out that even though she had said all this time that she was going to fight and not give up her baby, after she had the baby, she gave it up. And Fern is disappointed in her. And I felt like that was unfair. It was unfair of Fern to be so hard on Rose for making that choice, knowing exactly the circumstances that it was under. Yes, like Rose had been parading herself around as being like so strong and courageous this entire time. But one, she's still a kid. And two, the way they were coercing her.
They were literally torturing them. Like the way they would do it is they would stick the girls in a room and just wait. There was one girl who brought up she was there for like 3 months until they signed the paper.
Yeah. They were like, you don't want to give up your baby? Okay, we'll make sure you have to stay here. I think they also like threatened to put them in institutions as well.
Which I'm sure happened.
Exactly. And with those kind of threats, especially in 1970, as a woman, we barely even have rights, can't even get a credit card. Remember this.
Yeah.
Something like that being threatened to you, especially if you're a teenager, I mean, you will feel like you are backed into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
So Rose comes back. She has a few more days before her parents pick her up. We find out that she gives up her kid and she wants revenge.
Yeah, damn straight.
So they immediately seek out help from Miss Parcay because they can't. I forgot why they couldn't just do something from the book on its own.
They didn't really have the strength, or maybe it didn't reveal a lot of itself to them. Yeah. I can't remember exactly, but they ended up meeting the coven in the woods.
Right. And it cracks me up because Fern, even from the beginning, like when she meets Rose, she's like, oh my God, she's one of those happy people. Like, I was surprised that she didn't have a full-on breakdown when she saw Zinnia. She was like, a Negro.
Oh my God.
She didn't say that, but I was waiting for that moment. But yeah, like she was always so afraid. And so she talks about it a few times about being afraid of like hippies in the woods, because this is also during the time where Charles Manson and the Manson family and stuff had all just happened. So people were really scared. They would legitimate reason scared of some hippie types, right? But so they go into the woods, they meet these women. There's a bunch of different types of women there, including one who is naked in a dirty diaper, missing teeth. Yep. She's like, you got the yums. You got the yums.
When I read that, it reminded me when I was in England traveling around and I was waiting for a bus. And I couldn't find like the little stations where you pay for the ticket. A lot of people didn't even pay for a ticket. But anyway.
I was like, I don't even know how buses work. We live in a place where there's no public transportation.
Oh my God, yeah. But And I asked this lady, I was like, hey, do you know where I could pay for the ticket? And there was this app that you could use, but anyway, I didn't know that at the time. And she leans over because there was a rail between us. She leans over and she was like, you have a smoke? You have a smoke? In her little British accent. And I was like, no. Do you know where I can pay for those tickets? And she was like, over there. You don't have a smoke? So they meet the coven and they're interesting, but they're not there the rest of the book.
Literally not.
Until the very, very end.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that.
I didn't like that either.
Don't even name them at that point.
I think it's like 1 or 2 chapters of them talking to these women. They find the coven, or the coven kind of finds them, brings them in to go see Miss Parse. Miss Parse wants to have a private conversation with Rose because of Rose's revenge plot. And so another girl from the coven is talking to Fern about and introducing themselves to her.
What did Rose give up to do that curse?
Didn't she pull off her fingernail?
Yeah, she did. Never mind.
There's always a price to pay, as they say at the beginning. But the thing that was interesting to me about the whole coven scene and that old lady, I forgot, it's Mags or something is what they call her.
I don't remember.
Is you find out it's not that this is just a crazy old woman. She's literally holding inside of her the lineage of her family and like the family of witches. Mm-hmm. And so she seems like she's crazy to everybody else, but it's because she's literally living in the past, present, and future, or I guess the past and the present at the same time, going back and forth between all of these other people's memories and her own personal memories. Like there's a really, really fucked up scene where she like is brought back to memories of her own mother being burned at the stake right in front of her, which was.
I thought Miss Parse held all the business.
The library, but that was the whole thing about Mags. That's why they respected her too, because she also was holding her. Because I think Mags was holding her own mother, but okay. Miss Parse holds everyone.
Yeah,
the library of people, the line of Hecate.
Yeah,
and so so I thought that was a really interesting part because that's something in like spirituality they kind of talk about. How you're connected and you have your whole spirit family and stuff like that. But to actually have them actively inside you was interesting. And the other thing about Miss Parse is that Miss Parse is slowly deteriorating after the girls meet her. Mm-hmm. And so each interaction with her, she's kind of getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And she's really kind of pushing for Fern, but you don't know exactly why. But you start getting these hints in this interaction here in the woods.
Yeah.
So then after they get out, Rose is given a spell by Miss Parse. They go and complete it. Zinnia doesn't want any part of it.
Yep.
So she doesn't join them. But Holly, Fern, and Rose complete the spell. And the price that Rose has to pay is pulling off her fucking fingernail because it has to be massive, extreme pain. And they end up flying and stuff too after the spell. So they finish the spell. She has a powder and she gives half of it to Mrs. Wellwood. Then she has to leave already because she's already had her baby and her parents are picking her up. So she gives the other half of the spell powder to Fern because she has to complete the rest of the spell. And Fern doesn't feel comfortable because she doesn't really know what this powder is. She's caught between her own morals and then being loyal to Rose as a part of her coven.
Which I thought was such bullshit. This is where I'm going to rant about Fern. Because in the beginning, right, I don't really like how Fern was written. Well, as a protagonist, I didn't like her. And what I mean by that is I'm a strong believer in that your protagonist needs to be likable as a character because you're following them.
Interesting. I don't believe that.
But not necessarily a good person. But if you're following someone, I need to be able to tolerate them. And I thought she was a hypocrite throughout the entire thing because she expected all of her friends to, which is realistic, but she expected all of her friends to do these things. But then when she actually had to do something, like she didn't do it until like the very end. And she kind of went back and forth on everything all the time, very indecisive. I like Fern, but I don't think she should have been the protagonist. I think Zinnia should have been the protagonist.
I think it would have been a completely different book.
Which I wouldn't mind.
I like Zinnia a lot, but I think Fern was like that for a reason. I think it's important that we had empathy for her, but we're frustrated by her contradictions. Because just like we find out with Mrs. Wellwood, they are all victims of the same system. And it is what they choose to do after, which makes who they end up being in the end. And hypocrisy was a big theme of the book.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can see how you would think that. I just thought Zinnia was just more interesting. I thought she had more backbone. And I think Fern fell victim to a lot of stories, especially when they star women. The protagonist just lets things happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's another reason why I can't read romance. But yeah, I don't know. And I think it works for this book specifically in some ways.
Because of the time period?
And also because they're kids.
And they're kids.
That's why I feel like I would have preferred Zinnia to be the protagonist. I just thought she was more interesting as a person. And I liked her more as a character. And I wish we could have followed her story instead.
But she didn't even want to do that first spell.
Mm-hmm.
Then she was like, I'm out. And I kind of felt like that with her character in general. They kind of really didn't even have her really involved all that much besides to be, the conscience of Fern, which frustrated me because I feel like this is what happens with Black characters a lot. Because not just with Zinnia, but also Hagar. Hagar was another one of the workers. She basically was like the lunch lady at the home. And she ends up helping them a lot in the end, but she's very wise and hip to witchcraft and spirits and all of that. And she doesn't want to mess with it. And she shuts it down because there's this whole magical Black person trope.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually the Black person is the one to just, have the magical powers and the wisdom in the world. And that's basically all they do in the story. And I felt like that's all Zinnia and Hagar were doing in the story. And Hagar, I just felt like he was trying to make her the lead, but not until the very end. She basically throws away her entire career for these girls.
Yeah.
Gives away everything. And it
was to save Holly's life. So this is why I think Zinnia should have been the protagonist. Because one, I think I would have changed her character a little bit to be a bit more interested, or she could have observed more of the witchcraft kind of happening around her. Because if we think about it, Fern didn't really do any witchcraft either.
She didn't.
Nothing really happened to Fern except, she was indecisive the entire time. And she was begging to go home every 5 seconds. And then things just happened to her, which is normal in this circumstance. But I think if Zinnia was a protagonist, I think more things would happen because she's actually decisive and would have actually done something. And you're right. The entire time, she's just a foil to Fern. And I think Hagar, I don't really care for her character.
I wouldn't even say Zinnia was really the foil for Fern because I felt like the foil for Fern was Rose.
Yeah, but then she's gone. Right after she gives birth, she barely comes up, and then Zinnia kind of takes that place.
No, you're right. I don't know. Those were the few parts that didn't really work for me. I also kind of think, yes, it was the 70s, but I kind of wanted more race stuff discussed between those characters. I think maybe there might have been one or two lines that had come up at a certain point.
I also feel like they're teenagers, so maybe they would think about it more. That's actually another thing is I felt like Fern was younger than she was the entire time. She was 15. I feel like she acted more like she was 12. I had more complex thoughts when I was a 15-year-old.
Yeah. But I also, part of me is yes, I feel like I know both experiences because I do feel like there are some 15-year-olds who are very sheltered and kind of goody-goody.
Maybe I don't like her because I wouldn't like her.
And that might be it. And that's fine. Because I wasn't her biggest fan either. She was kind of a big drip. But I felt like it was fine in the purpose of the story, and especially because she is young. Mm. And that's why I'm this is giving YA vibes, because that's part of the reason I don't like to read YA normally, is the internal struggle.
The immaturity
is so fucking frustrating that it's too hard to get through. But I felt like it all made sense, and it wasn't so cyclical where I was okay, I have to read one more chapter about her feeling conflicted about something. then I'm gonna have to run. But he didn't spend chapters on those feelings, so I felt like it was fine.
It was brought up a lot, though.
It was brought up a lot,
and I feel like he could have cut that back a little bit. I'm not a repetitive person, and I think she could have thought about more than just wanting to go home the whole time, especially with the witchcraft.
Well, I mean, she did. Remember, she wanted to bring Holly home
till the very last minute. I think we should talk about the witches. So towards the end, right, she gives birth to her baby eventually, and Fern.
Yes. I was like, who's she?
And she has to give it up. And again, the therapist lady, I think her name's Diane, she's manipulative as fuck, and she makes her give it up. And then Miss Parse is dying, and she wants Fern to take over her position in the coven, essentially. And Fern doesn't want to do it, even though she made a pact to do it. And I felt like Miss Parse's character and the coven itself was probably the weakest part of the book.
I agree. I was kind of like, what the fuck are you doing, Parse?
She just kept coming to her 3 different times, basically saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then nothing happens. She didn't do anything until the very end.
She smoked a joint.
Dude.
I like the description of it being Christmas trees. I was like, I guess to somebody.
Holly goes into labor. And she's dying in her labor state. And then they rush to Hagar's. They end up there because they manipulate the taxi driver.
Wait,
which I thought was weird.
We forgot a big part in the story.
Oh my God, what happened?
With the spell that they did on Miss Wellwood.
Oh, I didn't really care for that.
But it's important.
Is it? It happens.
Okay, well real quick. So that spell that Fern helped complete, because this is the whole rift between her and Zinnia. Fern told Zinnia about the spell that Rose was trying to do on Miss Wellwood. And Zinnia basically was like, you don't have to give her that other half of the poison. And Fern is like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. She's my coven girl. And Zinnia was like, girl, don't let that fuck you up, because that's not the right thing to do. Poisoning people is not good, whether it's for the coven or not. And anyways, Fern lies, does it, tells Zinnia that she doesn't do it, but then Miss Wellwood gets sick. And Zinnia thinks that it's just the one half of the spell that's making her sick, but it's really because she gave her the full dose. And what happened was Rose wanted to make Miss Wellwood feel the exact same pain that she was in.
She gives birth to eels.
It was fucking disgusting.
I loved it.
I actually love the description. That's why I'm like, we gotta talk about the scene. What do you mean?
It's one of my favorite scenes.
If you like the description of the horror and the gore and stuff in that book, you really are gonna like We Sold Our Souls.
Okay, we have to talk about that.
This book actually genuinely terrified me. Okay. This is a very scary book to me. So anyway, so she gives birth to eels, and Hagar is the only person who cares about Miss Wellwood.
Which is weird.
Again, I'm like, what are you doing, Hagar? What is your point?
I think it's less caring. I think it's more she had respect for her.
Okay, yes. And that I could see.
Yeah.
So she had more respect for her. And so she goes to her house after she's been sick, because Miss Wellwood never gets sick. And that's where she sees that she's giving birth to the eels, and she helps her with that. And so we also find out that Miss Wellwood, in that sequence, before any of this had happened, she had actually gotten pregnant, but she was not married. She was not a teenager, but because she was not married, she was cast out by her father.
Thought it was good character building. I thought it was one of the most horrific scenes where it actually showed that it was a horror. And, after I read this book, though, a lot of critics said that they thought it wasn't a horror, which is weird to me, because I don't think that a book needs to be scary every page for it to be a horror, especially since I think it's pretty horrific to be a teenager and every moment you wake up, you have adults telling you that you're worth less than a shoe.
Some people might feel that way about this book because, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of establishing of characters and the setting.
I like that.
Exactly. If you like that kind of thing, then this book will be for you. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of horror books, including some of his, which I feel like are way more horror forward.
We should definitely cover another one, because this book wasn't one of my favorites. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I did like it a lot, but I feel like just by the way you talk about his other work, I feel like it's maybe one of the weaker ones.
I agree. I think of his books that I've read, because there's only one that I haven't read, which is How to Sell a Haunted House. And of them all, though, I would say this is probably my second least favorite.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I would say this is my least favorite. But with that said, I still enjoyed this book a lot. But that just speaks to how good his other books are, at least in my opinion. But yeah, I understand that critique because this is not what I would consider the super duper horror book. I think there's horror in it, obviously.
It's more psychological than, like in your face, bloody gore.
Yeah.
Only like a few scenes have that. So Holly goes into labor like right after Fern gives birth. Conveniently, I thought. But she starts to give birth. And then while they're going to the hospital, the girls kind of manipulate the driver into going to Hagar's instead as kind of like a plan to like escape her having to give her baby up to her molester, her rapist, I should say. And Hagar is at first like, no, get them away. But then she notices Holly's like, struggling. And then she decides to bring them in. And this birth scene is so long where they're like really struggling with it. And I didn't mind it too much, except for, the voice things that I went over where they're like howling with each other. Dude, I think that could have been cut. But other than that, I didn't mind the length. I kind of liked that how long it was to show the struggle of Holly, especially since I always pictured her as a little bit smaller. Maybe that had and she's young.
She's the youngest, yeah.
Like their pelvis probably isn't like, pelvis-y yet.
She just got a uterus.
I think I read somewhere where it takes like into your late teens, 20s till your pelvis is actually like ready for that. Like for some women, it like I know for me, I was a late bloomer in a lot of ways. Like I'm still flat, but I didn't like get like hips until I was like 17. I was old.
I just got hips last year.
You know what I mean, though? It takes a little bit for a woman's pelvis to develop.
Right.
And I think with Holly, it was especially difficult because she was a child. It's difficult for all of them because they were children, but she was the youngest. And so I liked how long it was. And I liked that it did show how difficult it was on everyone who was involved. Yeah, it was really sad, actually. I didn't feel the horror the entire time. I was just sad for Holly, especially since she is mentally stunted, I think, a little bit. It was just like she didn't really fully understand what was happening.
Yeah, which is so fucked up.
Yeah. Anyway, after she gives birth, they get caught by Miss Bellwood and the police officers, the cops, the popo. And then that's when everything kind of blows up in their face, right? And, they take them back. And the pastor is there, Reverend Jerry, his name is, to collect Holly's kid. And basically what they realize is that they've lost, right? And I like that the ending is kind of like, after all their efforts, they still lose. Because I felt it was very, I don't even want to say realistic, because I don't read fiction necessarily for the realism, but it is historical fiction too. So it kind of has to fall along that path. And I liked how they were just defeated in the end because they're children. And there is only so much they can do. Once they realize that it's over, Fern kind of loses it. And she gets out of the vehicle, the cop car, and she runs and she slices her tongue. And
I forgot about that. Shit was crazy.
And she tries to cast a spell and it's kind of delayed because the coven does it.
Right. But we also forgot to mention, in Fern's mind, she's convinced in a way that Holly will be able to get away is by, because Miss Parcay is dying. Miss Parcay wants to take over Fern's mind. Fern doesn't want to live the life of a traveling witch. And so she's like, oh, hey, I don't want this lifestyle. What about Holly? Holly doesn't want to go home. She'd be perfect for this. Miss Parcay is not necessarily game. She's like, this one's a little off. I don't know. But prove that she can do it. And she can come with us. And so she tries to help Holly prove that she can complete this magic so that she can go along with the coven, but it fails. And so then that's when the scene where she cuts off her tongue, because that's after that, right? After Holly had tried to do the spell herself.
Yeah. Did she actually cut her tongue? I thought she just sliced it.
She sliced it. Yeah. Holly thinks that she's gonna do it, that she's doing something, but then it doesn't work. And then when Fern does it, it works, but it's not actually Fern, like you said, it was the coven.
Yeah. Fern didn't do it right. That's
right. And the spell that they cast causes this massive storm, which destroys the house, puts all of the other girls in danger, by the way, not just the people like Pastor Jerry.
Which, let me just say, that storm scene was also way too long.
Interesting.
It was like pages of them saying that it crashed into the house, and then it crashed into the shutters, and then it crashed. And it's like, okay, we get it.
It's crashing.
Like he could have done that stuff in a few paragraphs. It didn't have to take that long. I just prefer faster pace. It's very subjective what I'm saying. For a lot of my critiques, I just tend to prefer faster paced books.
That's why we're doing this.
Exactly. But I did feel that particular scene of the storm, he could have invoked the feeling of fear and danger without taking up so many pages. But anyway, so that happens. And then Miss Parcay comes to her, and it's like the end of the line, right? And she tries to force her in. But then like the other witches save her. And then like she just gives up and takes Holly.
Yeah, because the other witches kind of are like, we're tired of your shit, Parcay. And they somewhat mentioned that in the earlier scene in the woods. They were like, oh yeah, we're all for her as long as it's for the coven's good. And emphasizing on as long as it's good for the coven. And not just, we have to be loyal to Miss Parcay. Which is part of why I believe that she was seeking young girls. Because I feel like Miss Parcay was a predator. And she was trying to use, and because this is something that predators do, you know, they try and make you feel like you're seen. They try and give you ways to make you feel like you're empowered. However, they're using it all along to take advantage, which she was.
So that's why I think she should have been in the story more. What I think should have happened with the coven is Miss Parcay. She should have helped them with more things, or she should have lied to Fern and been like when Fern brings up Holly, she should have lied and been like, okay, let's train her, kind of, but always be closer to Fern, trying to manipulate Fern throughout the story. And I think incorporating her that way, it could have allowed for the coven and witches to actually matter. It felt like they were really squeezed in at the end.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that at all.
The ending did seem kind of rushed because they was kind of like, okay, we got to wrap this up now. Pastor Jerry dies in the storm. Holly goes with the witches.
Which it was weird how fast she gave up after her repeatedly saying like this needed to happen. And then she just takes Holly anyway. It doesn't even matter. Because
I really don't know if it mattered who. I think she just had a preference.
Yes.
Because she wanted it to be Fern. Because she had all these qualities that Miss Parcay herself wanted. But you can't always get what you want.
I just feel like that should have been displayed more. Because I feel like we inference that on our own. And I think that they just needed to be involved.
Yeah.
The witchy stuff wasn't that involved that much.
Yeah. That's why people were like, it's not horror. It's not horror.
Yeah. And I think it would have been difficult to do, but he still could have done it, I think. Even when Hecate appeared, I was just like, what the fuck is this dumb shit? That's exactly what I thought. I was like, what the fuck? Nothing really happened. The storm doesn't bother me. I don't really care for Reverend Jerry dying that way, you know?
Either. I was like, we didn't even really get him. I mean, he's mentioned in the story. He shows up. They're like, oh, he's handsome and charming. And I'm like, all right, we already knew he was a fucking snake dog. Y'all just wanted to show us how charming he was. Okay, we get it. I mean, clearly he had to be charming for her parents to allow him to molest her, rape her from the years.
In the name of God.
Literally, this is why I feel like this book was so appropriate and probably why he wrote it, you know, in this last year.
It's probably why it took a back burner on the witchcraft and more on the political side, which I didn't mind, but I think that maybe not witchcraft itself, but I think Miss Parcay specifically should have been entwined in the story more.
I agree.
The very end when they're grown up, that was very sweet.
Yes.
I really liked it. It was so sweet. That's why I felt more disappointed in the ending of her being a child with the witches and everything. But I think the ending was so sweet and it made up for a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love that Zinnia did end up marrying him. That would have hurt me. I would have been like, no, another bullshit man.
Literally, I was so sad about like all of the other girls and especially the whole Bryony. It only was mentioned like for like 2 seconds, But I don't know why that hit me so hard because Bryony was so excited and she was like sewing all those handkerchiefs. And then he broke up with her and she was like, he promised. I was like, Diva, he did promise. And that's
at least one man wasn't a dick.
That's a man. Yeah. No, Zinnia, the fact that she married him, look, there's hope. It's so rare, but there's hope. You know, it was a fiction.
So what would you rate this book?
Out of 5, I'm going to give this a 3.75. I like this book. I think it's a good book. I think a lot of people will enjoy this book. However, I did have problems. I think because there was a slow burn, I think I had been hopeful that there would be
a big boom climax.
Exactly. I think I was expecting a bit more from where things ended up.
Yeah.
Not to say I didn't like how it ended. I did. And I did enjoy this book, but I didn't enjoy it enough to give it a straight up 4. But I'm also not saying this is a bad book. Like, this is a B+ in my mind. I don't know why it's easier for me to give it a letter score than to put it on a number. But
school has ruined us.
This is B+ material for me, 3.75. What about you?
I give it a 3.
That's way low.
I give it I think of it more as middle road.
Okay.
I liked a lot of it. I liked the side characters. I especially liked Rose and her spunkiness and Zinnia. I liked Hagar for the most part. I think she was well written. I'm just picky about my protagonists, and I wasn't a huge fan of Fern. I also thought that about 3/4 in, towards the end of her child era that we're in, I didn't like how he handled the witches and the coven. And I thought, especially with witchcraft in the title, I thought it should be more involved. But I did like the time period it's set. I did like the historical aspects and the critiques of society back then. And I think that really carried the book. And I really liked the sweet ending when they're older. I liked the time skip. And it's hard to do a good time skip, but I think that was the perfect way to do it. So I give it a 3. I personally don't think that's a bad score. I think it's kind of middle. And I think also it depends on who you are as a reader. I like really fast-paced books. And this one's a bit slower, and a lot of people might prefer that.
No, I mean, I think it's good that we both have these opinions because I am a person, I do like fast-paced books, but I also don't mind when a book is slower, depending on why it's slow. There's certain books where I'm like, girl, I'm not reading this. But in this case, it wasn't like that. I was always engaged in the writing. I love it.
It is well written for what it is, except for the ooh parts. I did like it was really grammatically, you could tell he's a well-seasoned writer.
Yes. And if we had more time, maybe we'll do an Instagram reel or something where I'll post some of my, or we can post our personal favorite quotes from the book itself, because the quotes that I read these are historical quotes that he used at the very beginning. But there are some other quotes in here that were super powerful. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm talking about, Diva. And part of why I love Grady Hendrix so much is, again, his way to express and portray the female experience. And it's never the same in any of his books. That's why I was like, okay, this is such a different tone from the other book that I read. I think the last book that I read from him was actually the Survival Group for Final Girls. And that was a different tone. That was another one where it was really hard to get into. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it was harder for me to get into that book in the very beginning, and then it takes off in the middle and then goes well until the end. But yeah, I think if you really like slower, if you like books that take a little bit of their time with establishing the characters and the setting, if you're trying to introduce yourself into the horror genre, if you don't really like things that are super scary, but you like kind of the piece of horror, I think this is a really great book to start.
And if you don't mind kind of grossness, we probably should have a trigger warning. It does get pretty gross.
Yeah.
I liked.
It gets gross.
But if you don't like that, maybe not. Maybe don't read it.
If you're not a gore fan, please follow us on Instagram, on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. We want to engage with you. We want to know, what are you reading right now? Have you read other Grady Hendrix books? What's your favorite Grady Hendrix book? Let us know.
Bye, queens.
Bye. Nice.
We ate